Hi, I'm Bill Burrud. Welcome to my amazing animal world. For the past 25 years, I've been out exploring every nook and cranny of this great world of ours in order to give you a first-hand view of the awesome creatures with whom we share this magnificent planet. I've left no stone unturned, stalking animals in some of the wildest places on Earth. Now I'm bringing my amazing animal world to you in a series of home video programs. Much of what you'll see may shock you. I've never believed in editing Mother Nature. But there's just as much here that's funny, fascinating, entertaining, informative, and infinitely moving. It is my hope with this home video presentation to alter your perception of nature, to make you more aware of the part you personally play in it, and to underscore the fact that not only must we all learn to get along with each other, but with the wild creatures as well. So come with me on a fantastic adventure. The animals and insects are waiting. Some of the introductions may be a little unusual, but I'll be pleased to be your host. Please, Des, punch.
The image of man mirrored in nature. Resourceful, intelligent beings, imbued with that special quality of life we identify in ourselves. These are our fellow primates, the creatures we call the apes. The apes. We know them as the members of that lively and diverse assembly of creatures, the grand hierarchy of primates, to which we ourselves belong. An order that embraces not only the so-called great apes, the chimps, the orangutans, and the gorillas, but includes as well a varied and versatile lot of other creatures, the monkeys of the old and new worlds, species as different from one another as are we from most of them. Yes, we know them well, these almost human creatures. Know them as the beings that stare back at us from behind the bars of cages. To most of us, all we know of our fellow primates, or they of us for that matter, derives from face-to-face encounters between our species in amusement parks and zoos. Perennial favorites with the public, the primates are an endless source of fascination and of speculation, of amusement and amazement, and the source as well of an occasional moment of shocked self-recognition. Yet what do we see across that gulf that divides the apes from men? A composite, no doubt, of fact and fiction, influenced to no small degree by the fanciful visions of Hollywood films. made to order, and he's played the part to the hilt in hundreds of motion pictures. With unblushing indifference to established facts, the movies for years have run roughshod over the gorilla's character, casting him in the role of a rapacious beast with an insatiable lust for the hapless heroine. In the usual old picture plot, things progress from bad to worse. And for a while, it seems that the damsel is destined to suffer an unthinkable fate. But help arrives, as it always must, just in the nick of time. In the end, to everyone's satisfaction, though to no one's real surprise, the fearful brute is at last subdued, and justice and humanity reign. But the movies are not solely to blame for the slur upon the apes. For the first explorers who sought the gorilla in the wilds of Western Africa brought back tales more terrifying than even Hollywood could concoct. Tales of a fiendish monster whose might was only matched by his ferocious disposition. Thus did the American Paul du Chaillu describe one such encounter in the year 1856. And now truly he reminded me of nothing but some hellish dream creature, a being of that hideous order, half man, half beast, which we find pictured in some representations of the infernal regions. He advanced a few steps, then stopped to utter that hideous roar, advanced again, and finally stopped when at a distance of about 6 yards from us. And here, just as he began another of his roars, beating his chest in rage, we fired and killed him. So, through the sights of a gun, the early naturalist gathered his knowledge. And thus the riddle would remain, the cloak of mystery that was to shroud for years the truth about the great man-apes. Close by the fabled Mountains of the Moon, in the heart of Central Africa, are the remote Virunga Mountains, moss-draped islands of subtropical splendor in an equatorial wilderness. Here, throughout much of the day, an enveloping mist clings to the lofty slopes, lending an air of strange foreboding to a realm that supports one of the last known populations of the mysterious mountain gorilla. Shy, secretive, rarely seen or photographed by man, the great ape here roams wild and free, master of his own dominion, far removed from the world of the zoo. Though the existence of the men of the mountains was rumored for centuries, it was not until the dawn of the 1900s that the mountain race of the mighty gorilla was finally discovered. And even today, the ways of the species have scarcely begun to be studied. Under the leadership of a silverback male, so named for its saddle of grizzled gray hairs, the gorillas wander the forests in tight-knit communal groups, pursuing a life that seems as conservative and as ritualized as that of civilized man. In this unique footage, filmed under difficult conditions, the cameraman tracks the group as they go, retracing a network of secret trails that climb the mountain slope. When at last the silverback deigns to sit, the morning's ramble slows to a halt, and the business of feeding commences in earnest. Contrary to their bloodthirsty image, the apes are for the most part strict vegetarians, subsisting on a diet of succulent shoots, as well as herbal leaves and roots, suitable fare for both the largest and the smallest of appetites. As modern observers have often remarked, very rarely do the mighty beasts betray any overt sign of aggression, though their kind has a well-known weakness for indulging in theatrical threats. More a matter of bluff than of belligerence, the breast-beating display may serve at times as a useful release of tension when edginess grips the group. But as suddenly as the crisis flares, the moment of panic is past, and the grand daily round resumes. Late morning finds the adults of the troop engaged in the traditional task of preparing beds for the long midday siesta, a break timed to coincide with the hours of the warmest sun. While for the older generation, it's a chance to doze, relieved of the cares of the day, the young view the occasion as an open invitation for play. Through the first 3 years of their lives, the infant gorillas remain in the constant care of their mothers. Rowdy and rambunctious youngsters with endless energy to burn, the young apes could strain the tolerance of the most indulgent parent. But the mother gorilla is content to rely on no more than a gentle cuff to set her offspring straight. In its measured and sober routine, the life of the gentle giants would seem very nearly idyllic, were it not for the fact that the ape's lush domain is coveted by farmers and herdsmen. Today, experts contend that unless current efforts succeed in curbing the mounting tide of encroachment, the most maligned of all the primates, first discovered a mere 80 years ago, may have roamed its last days in freedom upon the earth before the close of the present century. The gorillas are not alone among the wild primates of Africa, for the land is home to a host of simian species, old world monkeys of more ancient lineage than the family of apes. The dog-like baboons share a niche on the fringe of the tropical forest with the arboreal vervets, on occasion competing for the same natural resources. When a conflict of interest arises, the vervet invariably yields to the larger monkey, though all that may be at stake are a few spiders and grubs. But it is the symbol here that matters, the confirmation of the baboon's territorial supremacy. Like the apes, the baboons and the vervets pursue lives that are rigidly circumscribed, dependent upon elaborate codes of order and of conduct. Typically, disputes between the two are amicably resolved, and vervet and baboon enjoy a partnership that is peaceable and harmonious. Though life on the open plains demands that some must keep constant vigil, there is time here as well to indulge in the joys of leisure, and time to sleep with all memory of the marauding leopard comfortably far away. For the vervets, grooming fills the quiet hours in the middle of the day. Yet among their clan there is cause for apprehension, for it is with knowing caution that they greet the resident ape, the cunning chimpanzee. Like the gorilla, the chimp is by habit a vegetarian, with tastes that run to a wide range of leaves and fruit. But on extreme occasions, it has been known to kill. The death of the monkey at the hands of the chimp, while shattering the public image of this popular and playful primate, provides stunning testament to its skill in killing prey without benefit of fang or claw or weaponry. For here, after all, the ape must live by its wits as a wild chimpanzee, far removed from the pampered life in the circus or the zoo. The slaughter itself stirs the rest of the troop with a sense of strange excitement, riveting the attentions of the apes upon the courageous killer. For like man, it's believed that the chimps may kill not out of hunger alone, but for the prestige that accrues to the hunter in the eyes of the group. In the intricate world of chimp society, bonds of allegiance may be built upon the act of sharing meat, a privilege that extends to those in the group, but not to the outsider. Highly territorial here at the edge of his range, the male chimp will defend his ground when he perceives that his rights are threatened. When the excitement at last has run its course, the troop turns to more casual tasks. As with so many of the monkeys and apes, grooming looms large in the life of the chimp, a pleasurable practice that serves to maintain hygiene, while at the same time defining the place of each ape in the pecking order of the group. Through tireless tussles and wrestling matches, the young chimps gradually learn the way to hold their own in the world, exploring new opportunities and rehearsing the roles they will one day play in adult chimpanzee society. To the grown-ups of the group falls the chore of constructing the nest, a business accomplished by weaving together odd fronds of vegetation. Nomads by nature, the restless chimps will linger here only so long as it suits their purposes. And within a day, the band may well be far away, pursuing distant promises and renewing old alliances. But for now, their realm is at peace and secure. A world that with good fortune will be filled with wide horizons and many more tomorrows. Thousands of miles east of Africa lies one of the last great tracts of tropical forest remaining in southern Asia. Here on the island of Borneo is a living wilderness whose myriad wonders have yet to be fully charted. A realm appropriate as a refuge for the rarest and most retiring of the trio of great apes. Though smaller than the gorilla and less social than the chimp, the orangutan is regarded as the gentlest and most sensitive of all the primates. A curious and amiable creature whose sole living enemy is man. In underdeveloped Borneo, timber is a valued resource, and the rights of the orang must often be shunted aside. Every year, dozens of apes, like this one, are rescued by farmers and loggers. And the lucky ones among them eventually find their way into the hands of Stanley De Silva, game warden for the state of Sabah, and world authority on the care and repatriation of refugee orangs. To De Silva's compound at Sipilak, on the edge of the great rainforest, each orphaned ape in time is brought, there to join a company of its kin in a most unusual community, a halfway house for orangs unable to survive on their own. For the first few days, the newcomer is placed in quarantine and provided with special care, pampered on a diet of fortified milk to rebuild the body and spirit. Hygiene is important at Sipilak, but having to bathe is as unpopular with the baby orang as with any human infant. Chow call at the camp is always well attended, for most of the refugees here have lost the skill to find food for themselves in the forest. But through regular excursions into the woods, they are gradually reacquainted with their natural domain, towards the day when they may return to a free-roaming life in the wild. Learning the rudiments of the camp routine comes quickly for the new arrival. But earning the respect of the old-timers on hand may take a little bit longer. Naturally enough, among the apes, etiquette and the rules of order count for very little. And life on the government dole is a round of indulgence and leisure. As a substitute for the bedding of foliage wild apes find in the forest, sleeping bags are issued toward the end of the afternoon, and the orangs sack out in the open, each in his own peculiar way, according to his own peculiar fashion. Venting frustration may help the injured party to feel a little bit better. And at last, by close of day, an easy tranquility settles upon the orphans of Sipalak. With some reluctance, the residents of Camp Sipalak greet the dawning of a new day. A day of fresh prospects and challenges. Of one thing, the orangs can be certain, that this day, like all those that have gone before it, will bring a little sunshine and a generous measure of rain. In the forests of Borneo, a foot of rain may fall in an afternoon, transforming the refugee camp into a wilderness of water and mud. In the open forest, the wild orangs manage to patiently wait out the rain under shelters they fashion from leaves. But in the civilized realm, the inclement weather is nothing but an annoyance. The inevitable problems that ensue in the wake of the storm seem fitting for a day such as this, a day well suited for departures. Today, with her infant son, a young female named Joan will leave Sipilak, trading a life she has known for years for a future that is as yet uncertain. Sooner or later, every orphan orang must make this same sad journey deep into the Bornean backcountry, from which no roads return. Though repeated forays into the forest have prepared Joan for this moment, her son has yet to glimpse the world that will be his home. High up the muddy headwaters of the Sagama River waits the Ulu Sagama Reserve, a 600-square-mile sanctuary set aside by the Sabah government for the protection of its wildlife. Here, Joan and her son will make a new start in a realm that's off limits to man. A realm fortunately far removed from the chainsaw, the plow, and the gun. It's estimated that each adult orang needs a full square mile of forest to support its foraging habit. But in this respect, the Sagama Reserve is enviably endowed, promising living space to spare. With an abundance of life and a good stand of tall saraya trees, the tract is perfectly provisioned for the orangutan's special needs. And if there's anywhere on Earth that Joan and her son stand a reasonable chance of survival, it ought to be right here. Inevitably, it's with mixed emotions that the men of Sipilak face the moment of parting. For over the years, Joan has become a part of each of them, an old friend, a companion. Whether the orang and her offspring can cross the delicate line that divides the world of men and the waiting world of the wild yet remains to be seen. But dozens of their kind have gone before them to multiply and to thrive. And so long as men still see a point in preventing these, our fellow creatures, from lapsing into the shadows of time, then a flicker of hope must remain that the solitary ape may survive for many generations to come. The ancient land of Southeast Asia labors today under a staggering burden of humanity. Yet despite such problems, her people still manage to make a place in their world for their fellow living creatures. Even in teeming India, cattle vie for resources, playing as they have for centuries past a respected role in the majestic round of being. The concept of reverence for life enjoys strong religious endorsement. For the Buddha himself is said to have taught that just as the mother shields her child from harm, so should the faithful embrace with thoughts of love every living thing, to guard God's creatures from misfortune. Enshrined as well in the Hindu mythology is the legend of Hanuman, the monkey god, whose army once served on the side of the great Prince Rama. Today, Hanuman's temples crowd the Hindu lands, sanctuaries where the lively monkeys known as macaques enjoy a privileged status. The most widespread and opportunistic of all the primates, with the sole exception of man, the macaques fell heir by default to a time-honored tradition that holds all monkeys to be sacred. As such, they are afforded the run of the ruins, with no human hand raised against them, prospering here as they might never have done on their own in the world of the wild. Around the world, 500 million Hindus regularly pay homage to the monkey god, through rites such as these on the island of Bali, honoring the deity for delivering the earth from destruction. Led by the Brahmin, the worshippers reenact the deeds of the simian army, and in so doing, reaffirm the mystic alliance between monkeys and mankind. In a similar way, the Buddhists of Thailand invoke the blessing of the Bodhisattva, in the earnest belief that all the glories of eternal nirvana will accrue to those who bestow compassion upon helpless beings. As a consequence of this conviction, the grounds of the Thai temples literally swarm with macaques, a ready source of diversion for the resident monks. As with the apes, childhood among the macaques is a time of close parental care. But unlike the apes, the monkeys are endowed with a tail, an appendage that comes in handy in special situations. The resourceful, adaptable, easygoing macaques are equally at home in forest, field, and town, a fact which has done much to assure their continued prosperity. For while the retiring orangs have dangerously dwindled in numbers, the monkeys have held their own, roaming the east in the millions, and providing an enduring monument to the bond of fellowship that still unites the world of monkeys, apes, and men. Of all the non-human primates, only the hardy macaques have managed to make a life for themselves in the very lap of civilization. The fortress of Gibraltar boasts a colorful history as a sanctuary for peoples of diverse creeds and persuasions, a fact which qualifies the rock as a fitting refuge for Europe's only resident monkey, the so-called Barbary ape, a stub-tailed macaque with an acquired talent for aping it up for the tourists. Today, only a few dozen monkeys remain on the loose on Gibraltar. And as the local legend goes, when the last of their kind leaves the rock, the era of British rule will have finally drawn to a close. It was for this reason, they say, that Winston Churchill, in the dark days of World War II, committed the might of the empire to maintaining the monkey's well-being. To Sergeant Alfred Holmes fell the solemn task of serving as keeper of the apes, a duty that demands provisioning the monkeys each day with funds from the colonial purse. A routine roll call and head count gives Holmes a chance to check the troop, assuring that all are present and in prime condition. If any of his charges seems unfit, Holmes is prepared to take immediate remedial action. On this particular day, Roger, a year-old male, appears weak and lacking in spirit. A banana serves as a lure to gain Roger's confidence, so that Holmes can safely take him captive. Intensely loyal, the troop sees Roger's abduction as a hostile act, one for which their friend will not soon be forgiven. At the Garrison Hospital, however, the patient receives the same professional attention accorded any enlisted man. And to Holmes, who has known Roger since the day he was born, it comes as a relief to learn that he'll be back on his feet in a week. The occasion of Roger's release is a traumatic moment for his distraught mother, and a climate of distrust prevails, despite the fact that without Holmes's efforts, her youngster might not have survived. Though the Barbary apes, to first appearances, lead a life that's footloose and carefree, unbridled by social conventions, their world, in fact, is a maze of interlocking relationships, governed by inviolable rules of order, status, and privilege. The macaques are doting mothers, and the duties and rewards of child-rearing are an abiding preoccupation, not only to the immediate family, but to all the adults of the troop. Coddled and pampered through its early weeks, the baby grows up in a climate of care, the object of constant parental concern. Unfortunately, among infant macaques, the mortality rate is high. 2 weeks after his birth, this mother's firstborn succumbed to an unknown ailment, a tragedy that for a time plunged the troop into a state of abject despair. Sorrow, however, does not linger long in macaque society, and the specter of death is soon swept aside. Energetic and resourceful, the macaques of Gibraltar persist today as symbols of a fortuitous yet durable trust that serves to enrich the world of monkeys and men. Even the rugged, snowbound mountains of Japan's remote Shimokita Peninsula have failed to discourage the remarkably adaptable macaques. Next to man, the most northerly dwelling of all the primates, the snow monkeys inhabit a harsh and inhospitable realm, a domain ruled by brutal extremes of climate. Here in the high mountain valleys, snow may fall for 6 months of the year, pushing daytime temperatures down to as low as 40 below. Under these conditions, the macaques have evolved unique adaptations of behavior and physique that distinguish them from their fair weather relations. Virtually tailless and outfitted with coats of fine, woolly hair that fluff out to entrap warm air, the monkeys ball up to wait out the worst of the winter. But regardless of wind and cold, the search for food cannot cease. For though in summer the forest provides leaves and fruit to sustain the needs of the troop, now when resources are drastically curtailed, the monkeys must live on reserves of fat, nibbling on buds and bits of bark to gain the energy to stay alive. With the first break in the weather, life takes a welcome turn for the better. And while mothers guard their offspring, born in the late snows of winter, the more venturesome adolescents occupy the sunny hours in acrobatic play, a superfluous pursuit to the adults of the troop, who must seize each opportunity to pursue the quest for food. Though among the young, such considerations count for very little, the snow monkeys, in fact, today face a sober dilemma. For like so many of their fellow primates, they are rapidly losing ground to the demands of civilization. And now their shrinking domain provides no more than the minimal resources required to sustain them. Fortunately, however, the monkeys are no longer solely dependent upon the uncertain rewards of nature for their continued survival. The voice, well known to the Japanese macaques, belongs to Kosei Izawa, a primatologist who's been studying the Judani Valley troop since 1968, supporting them through the long winter months with free handouts of food, a temporary expedient until effective conservation measures can be enforced. By helping the monkeys of the snowy forest to weather these desperate times, Kosei has earned their trust, gaining insight in the process into unsuspected facets of their biology and behavior. In the world of man, as in all of nature, to survive is to adapt. And Kosei is convinced that an understanding of the adaptations which have enabled these hardiest of primates to survive may ultimately help to ensure mankind's survival. Though field studies of monkeys and apes have attracted considerable attention, research on captive primates has also contributed much to our understanding, not only of the animals, but of ourselves. In 1969, scientists funded by NASA scored a historic coup, the launching of the first monkey into orbit around the Earth. To physiologists and psychologists, our fellow primates enjoy a special appeal, for their physical and emotional makeup is amazingly like our own. It was for this reason that a Southeast Asian macaque was chosen to lead the way for man in the exploration of space. At the University of California in Los Angeles, Dr. Ross Adey began training a select group of would-be astronauts 2 years before the flight, teaching them to perform a program of manual and mental tasks in return for food rewards. Monitored by video camera, the monkeys played a kind of electronic memory game, matching up an array of abstract visual symbols with a swiftness and skill to rival the fastest human competition. Eventually, the task was made even tougher to simulate the conditions in space. Wearing a mask to avoid transmitting infections to the animal, the researcher suits up the macaque, now painlessly implanted with electrodes, to measure brainwave activity during the course of the tests. By acquainting the animal with its accommodations aboard the space capsule, the trainers prepare it in advance for the situation it will face on the day of the flight. Despite the cramped quarters and the cumbersome electronic gear, the monkeys displayed incredible forbearance with the endlessly repetitive routine. In fact, far from protesting, the trainees seemed to enjoy their time in the simulator, and isolation caused no deterioration in their performance on the tests. Now, while the monkey ran through its repertoire of tasks, its vital functions were chronicled by a battery of sophisticated instruments, programmed to provide a continuous printout of such variables as blood pressure, heart rate, metabolic rate, and body temperature. At the end of this series of trials, the initial group of contenders was winnowed down to 13. And it was this group that graduated to the final training phase at Cape Kennedy. For the American space program, this was to be the most challenging launch to date, one that demanded the closest cooperation between animals and men. Through several long months, the tests continued, as every conceivable component of the astronauts' constitutions was weighed and measured and analyzed. And then at last, the decision was made. At 5 a.m. on June 28, 1969, after 24 months of preparations, a male macaque named Bunny rode down the corridor at Kennedy to keep his appointment with destiny. Preparing for the launch had called for a monumental effort on the part of an army of technicians and scientists, backed up by a multi-billion-dollar arsenal of instrumentation. But most of all, the endeavor had hinged upon the unflagging collaboration of a spirited and intelligent primate who now waited alone for the historic moment to come.
Main stage. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
For Bunny, the mission was to have a tragic conclusion, for he was to die 2 days after returning safely to Earth. But his achievement would not be forgotten, for his flight into space was to launch a new chapter in the grand adventure of primates and men. In the late 1960s, even as the first space monkey orbited the Earth, in Reno, Nevada, a development was quietly underway which would prove even more dramatic. A development which was to profoundly alter the historic relationship between apes and men. It was in 1966 that psychologist Alan Gardner of the University of Nevada, along with his psychologist wife, Beatrice, began studies that compared the learning ability of chimpanzees and human children to determine just how clever a chimp could be. It was well known from studies in the wild that chimps are intelligent, inventive, perpetually curious creatures, experts at expressing emotion. But the limits of their abilities had hardly begun to be explored. The focal point of the Gardner study was a female chimp named Washoe, 10 months old in this early black and white footage, and in most respects very much a typical baby. But it was not the Gardners' intention to raise Washoe as a pet. Instead, they wanted to know whether she could be taught to talk.
For a very long time, most comparative psychologists have believed that chimpanzees are smart enough to use a human language. Yet, in many attempts in which chimpanzees lived in a fairly human environment, they seemed unable to pick up a spoken language. It occurred to many of us that perhaps it was a deficit in their vocal cords rather than an intellectual deficit. Perhaps they're unable to make the sounds of human speech. It occurred to us that if we could find a true human language that did not require the sounds of human speech, and if we could then provide the chimpanzees with a suitable environment, a human-like environment, we could find out if they could learn to use a true human language the way human beings learn to use it.
As Beatrice Gardner explains, one language in particular attracted their attention.
American Sign Language is a true human language with its own vocabulary and its own way of forming sentences, its own rules of grammar, quite different from that in spoken English. It is a language of deaf people. It is a language in which they can talk about anything, any topic that is relevant to their lives.
To the Gardners, American Sign Language, or Amislan, seemed made to order. So after learning the language themselves, they prepared to teach it to Washoe.
A project of this kind requires a special sort of laboratory. There are many things that you can study with caged animals in a barren environment. But if you want to study the development of human language, and if you want to compare the development of the chimpanzees with the development of human children, then you need an interesting and attractive environment, one with many sources of stimulation and one that will stay stimulating for many years.
As these scenes filmed by the Gardners show, Washoe's early life was filled with companionship. And it was these companions who taught her her first Amislan sign, the two-handed gesture for more. Like any child, whenever the play would stop, Washoe demanded more. And she soon learned the correct sign to ask for affection. Opening things required another sign, whether to open a case full of toys or a portable phonograph. The sign for sweet was an inevitable favorite, and after a query to make sure her instructor has understood, Washoe repeats the request and happily collects her reward. Now Washoe asks for a drink, and Beatrice Gardner complies. More drink? Dr. Gardner asks. Drink, Washoe replies, and the request is granted. Then Washoe correctly identifies her image in the mirror. Me, Washoe Big Ears, she signs. Here Dr. Gardner signs, Washoe, come hug. And Washoe understands. So now, when her friend Susan feigns distress, Washoe hurries to the rescue, signing, hug, hug, hug. At 3 years of age, Washoe was already adept at naming things, like the dog in the picture book. Or another kind of dog. Or a cat with long whiskers. Another page, that's another dog. And this one, that's right too, another kind of cat. 4 years after she came to live with the Gardners, Washoe had learned over 130 signs, using these in daily conversation with her companions, an achievement to shake man's cherished notion of his privileged place as the sole creature endowed with the gift of language. Who's smart? Susan asks. Dr. G, Washoe replies. Yes, Dr. G. Who's stupid? Susan asks. Susan's stupid, Washoe replies. Who's stupid? Susan's stupid, says Washoe. It has been 11 years since Washoe left the world of her kind to live in the world of men. Today, with her longtime companion, Dr. Roger Fouts, she has embarked on the exploration of new horizons at the renowned Institute for Primate Studies at Norman, Oklahoma. No longer the rambunctious chimp she once was, Washoe has now come into her own as a sensitive and sober-minded adolescent.
Washoe is 12 years old now. And you can't treat her like a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old and expect to get away with it. As a result, we sit down and we discuss things. You know, I ask her questions, and it's a give-and-take relationship. With a younger chimp, when they're still learning, of course, I'm a little pushier, I'm a little bossier with them. But that works for them. So I try to adjust my behavior to where the chimp is developmentally. I do attempt to take the chimps on their terms. And in terms of respecting them, treating them properly, I think we have a moral obligation to treat them properly, to care for them properly, to give them the respect and environment that they need for proper social development. When Washoe was first published, some reactions was, well, we've known chimps to do it all along, so what else is new? Another reaction was, obviously, she's a very intelligent chimpanzee. In other words, the Gardners had somehow stumbled on a genius chimp In other words, they were willing to let her into this uniqueness thing, but not the rest of the chimps. And we've since, of course, shown that wasn't true. Washoe is a very average chimpanzee. They all have different personalities and so on. But that's what's addictive about chimps, too, is that no 2 days are the same. Something always new is happening. And oftentimes you wonder which one of you is the brighter of the two primates. And on some days I'll say that I am, but on other days I'm sure that the chimps, they've done a good job of putting me in my place.
At the Primate Institute, more than a dozen chimps are enrolled in the Ameslan instruction program, pursuing their language studies in a setting which affords them many of the social and psychological amenities of a home in the heart of the wilds.
Listen, no, it's not a listen, that's close and form.
One of the most promising students in the Oklahoma program is a youngster named Allie, who boasts an understanding of English as well as Ameslan.
Pipe. Pipe. That's right. Now do it again. What's this? Pipe. Very good. Okay. What's this? Pipe what? What's this? What is that? Pipe what? Pipe food. I guess pipe tobacco is sort of a pipe food, for pipes anyway. The whole notion of being able to talk to the animals had a very strong effect, I think, a revolutionary effect on the way we conceive of ourselves and of other animals, rather than expecting animals to behave in a certain fashion. We can listen to them. They have a lot to tell us. And now that we have talking chimpanzees, they can tell us in a mutual mode, which hasn't been done before. I think it's more fun to work with the chimps and say, what are you doing, chimpanzee? You know, tell me about yourself. What's this? Airplane, do a little better. But I'm coming to conclusions that they are persons. They have personalities. They are non-human. They're not humans, but they're non-human beings. They have personalities. They have existences. They have lives to live. They improved it. But he wants to touch. Chimps seem to do better. No, with touch signs involving, like he was pulling his little finger. What is this now? What is that? That's good. There he got it.
In his work with Roger, Allie has graduated from the simple naming of things to such abstract concepts as in and on and under.
Under what? What's this? Pillow. That's right. Good. That's good.
Like the other chimps, Allie picks up new words through imitation as well as through demonstration.
So what's that, Allie? That's a radio. That's right. And if we were teaching him the sign radio, we'd mold his hands like this. Or to improve his diction. It's radio. That's right. What's this? Radio. Good.
To permit detailed studies of the chimps' responses, the researchers rely upon videotapes, a permanent record of the interaction between student and teacher. Diana Davis devotes much of her time to tutoring a 7-year-old chimp named Jezebel, diligently noting each nuance of gesture and behavior as it's added to the chimp's rapidly expanding repertoire of signs. So far, Jezebel has proved herself to be remarkably creative, with a surprising skill for combining words to express new and perceptive ideas, a talent that elevates her beyond the ranks of the mere research subject.
When I look at myself interacting with Jezebel, I feel very fortunate. I never thought that I would someday be able to communicate with another species in this fashion. It would have never entered my mind. And it is also a great source of pleasure for me to know Jezebel. She has become a very important aspect of my life.
This is the Yerkes Regional Primate Research Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Here the study of ape language skills has entered a new dimension. The researcher is Dr. Timothy Gill. His subject, a 7-year-old chimp named Lana. The medium of communication between them, an electronic keyboard tied into a master computer. Each symbol on the console is equivalent to a word, color-coded to fit a particular class of objects or actions. To minimize errors of interpretation, the computer continuously monitors everything Lana says, providing a permanent printed record for later, more detailed analysis. Even at night when the staff is off duty, Lana may continue to converse with the computer, requesting such things as drinks or snacks, all delivered to her by the machine. Or perhaps to fill an evening alone, she'll select a movie or a favorite piece of music. But Lana's life is far from lonely, as Dr. Dwayne Rumbaugh explains.
We observed very early in the project that Lana learned best if a close social interaction was permitted between her and Tim and the other technicians. During these informal training sessions, Lana came to enjoy the task on which she worked, and she became proficient in that which she was being taught.
On one memorable occasion, Tim tried to trick Lana by putting cabbage in the food dispenser in place of the monkey chow she preferred. It was on June 11, 1975, that the historic incident occurred.
After I placed the cabbage in the machine, Lana questioned me in the following manner. Question, you put chow in machine? To which I responded, chow in machine. This exchange took place 4 additional times, after which Lana came back with question, chow in machine? To which I responded, yes. Lana was not about to buy this, however, for she came back with no chow in machine, which was indeed true. I asked, question, what in machine? She did not respond, so I repeated it again. Question, what in machine? To which Lana responded, cabbage in machine. I responded, yes, cabbage in machine. Lana then came back with question, you move cabbage out of machine? To which I responded, yes, and proceeded to remove the cabbage.
Despite the occasional good-natured deception, Tim and Lana share a deep bond of affection, and one of her favorite requests is, please, Tim, tickle Lana. Recently, Lana's accomplishments attracted the attention of Dr. Dorothy Parkell of the Georgia Retardation Center.
We were really intrigued with what had been done with Lana and interested in seeing what would happen if we tried to apply this technology with human subjects.
Dr. Parkell has found that the same keyboard system that serves Lana as a medium of communication can help to unlock the potential of the retarded child to express her wishes and feelings. In this way, the work with Lana has already begun to rebound to the betterment of humankind. helping to bridge the gap that has too long existed between man and chimpanzee.
What? You're asking me what? It's gum, yes. Do you like gum?
What you're witnessing is a two-way conversation between a scientist and a gorilla, a significant switch on the old girl and ape routine popularized by the Hollywood films.
Good. Let's be polite. Okay.
The young lady is Penny Patterson, a psychologist at Stanford University. And her companion is an ingenuous lowland gorilla named Coco.
Coco, what's the matter? You look sad. Are you sad this morning? What's wrong? Coco, tell me what? Tell me what's wrong. You look sad. You cry? Did you cry this morning? You didn't. You look sad though, and tired. Let's see. I think I know what you'd like. Something to make you happy. Yes. Would this make you happy? Special food. No, it's not candy. You know what that is? Not cake. Yes, cookie. Okay. You're happy? You're happy to have a cookie? Good.
The world's first talking gorilla, Coco regularly discusses not only her wants and needs, but her inner feelings as well, conversing in sentences over 12 signs long.
You don't feel like that.
At 6 years of age, she commands a vocabulary of over 300 words, boasting an IQ equivalent to that of a human child just a year younger than herself.
B for bouquet. I don't know the sign, but it has flowers. B is for bowl.
Despite appearances, Coco is still only a youngster. But like any child her age, she's developing rapidly, day by day, with no end to her progress in sight. In the same vein, Alan and Beatrice Gardner, whose revelations regarding Washoe's linguistic skills touched off a revolution in the biological sciences, are pursuing a new generation of communication studies, encouraging the chimps in their care to teach sign language to one another. Already, 2 of the Gardner students have far outstripped Washoe's performance, and no one today can guess how far they may have progressed by the time they reach intellectual maturity, some 15 years from now. But to Roger Fouts of Oklahoma, the research on ape intelligence has already begun to register its impact on the world at large.
It now throws us in the position of saying, well, maybe we're not separate from nature. Maybe we're not different in kind, which leads us to the logical conclusion that we're, where we always have been, a part of nature. And if you're a part of nature, then you have to start perceiving nature in a different fashion. And I think of getting the notion of a continuity, that we're part of this whole ecosystem and part of this planet, that we'll have to start adjusting to this as being just one member here that's trying to make it along with everyone else.
The dawning awareness of the consciousness of the ape is expanding mankind's horizons, challenging old misconceptions and stimulating a fresh appraisal of ourselves. And yet, ironically, just as we come to recognize these, our fellow primates, and to reach out to learn from them. Their wild domain shrinks daily, crushed under the heavy heel of human progress. Today, the chimpanzees are barely holding their own in scattered enclaves of African forest. The mountain gorillas are divided and driven back to a few lonely volcanic peaks. And the last of the orangutans sulk in the shadows of the deepest Bornean jungles. Yet, if they should go, whose loss will it be? Our own, most assuredly. For in losing the company of the family of apes, we will lose an irreplaceable part of ourselves, a mirror to our animal nature, and a measure of our humanity.